Welcome everyone to this episode of Gaming Careers in collaboration with gamesjobsdirect.com and Careerjay.com. Today we're speaking to Dean Baker, an MD and founder of eSkills Games, with the subject based around how do students start off in the marketplace, basically. So without wasting any more time, I'll ask the question to Dean straight away. First of all, Dean, you'd just like to give a quick kind of introduction to yourself, and we'll go from there, basically.
Okay, well, hello everyone. I've worked in the games industry for around 20 years. Started at Codemasters, worked at Evolution Studios, then set up my own company, Red Chain, in 2008, and last year set up eSkills Games, get into crypto play to earn gaming, and looking forward to answering the question.
Thanks for taking the time, Dean. Really good of you. Lots of questions. But the first question is what actually got you into the gaming industry? Why did you go into the gaming industry? And basically, what really important is how do you get your first break into the gaming industry?
Okay, well, nice easy one to start. Yeah, I think it was just my passion. I just absolutely love games. I'd worked a bit in the music industry. I was massively into music at the time as well. But I think around the time of the iPod and iTunes, and back then everyone just stealing digital music, you could sort of see the signs on the wall for the music industry. And I'd been into games since I was a kid. And I think around that time, I think I probably had delusions of grandeur that I could make a game and design a game. And it was I'd not done programming or art or anything like that at university, so I didn't have any obvious skills to offer the gaming industry. But I wanted to get into design. I had a bit of an idea of it. I think back then Edge magazine had not been around that long, and I was able to learn a bit about the industry, how it worked and how games were made. And they even had job adverts at the back of Edge, which I think they probably still do now. And I'd never ever seen a job advert for the games company. It seemed like one of those impossible dreams, and you never really knew how anyone got in there. But I think I just came up with a slightly crazy plan to switch career and start at the bottom and just try and work my way up very, very quickly. I think through Edge magazine I saw Codemasters advertising the jobs, and Rare. I was living at Leamington Spa at the time, and they were both fairly close by, and Codemasters were looking for QA people, and I just thought, right, I'll go in there, try and get out of there as quickly as I can and into the design department. It was very much a naive dream, I think, at the time, but yeah, I think I just knuckled down, got to know as many people as I could in a short space of time, tried to learn as much as possible. I was lucky that back then Codemasters was still quite small, and there was a lot of very helpful people there, and it was quite an exciting time to be working there. Things like Colin McRae Rally were massive, and the company grew very quickly. And I think within 8 or 9 months, I managed to get out and into the design department, and it was a really exciting time. A really happy time in my life. I can remember being happy to go into work every Monday morning, which is a rarity. Not always had that. So I think it was just one of those things that I guess part of you thinks, it was just all sort of lucky and it just happened. But I think, with hindsight, if you went back and analysed it, I think it was one of those times in my life where the passion sort of guided me, and it meant it kind of forced me to. I wasn't probably the most extrovert person, but it forced me to go and get to know people. So I got to know.
Did you have transferable skills, kind of technical skills, or?
I think at some level, yes. I mean, QA, I think I had.
What were they, Dean? What were they?
I had good attention to detail. I think that certainly starting in QA, I mean, it was all completely new to me. How, what maybe the average person on the street thinks a bug is in a game is probably not a bug. I think people think if it's something they don't like, that's a bug, but it's actually slightly more technical than that. Once I was kind of told this is what you're looking for, and this is how you look for it, and this is how you report it, I think I've got that kind of mind, I guess, that responds well to that sort of task. It sounds very silly, but back then, one of the things that really helped me was just that I was able to get to work on time. I was organised. I didn't skive off and all the rest of it. And there were unfortunately people there that were quite disorganised. I can remember when I was in the design department that we let someone go because they were just late every day and they just couldn't get to work on time. So I think.
Good point.
Yeah. It's a silly little thing. Just turning up on time, being passionate and enthusiastic can get you a long way, especially in maybe not in, I don't know, a hedge fund or something, but in the game industry, if you're prepared to start at the bottom, just that passion, enthusiasm, willingness to learn, that can get you a long way.
I think job, but especially in the game. What situation? What could have helped you a little bit more once you've got your foot in the door? Basically, what could have helped you a little bit more to kind of progress your career a bit faster?
I think, I gave this a bit of thought the other day because I don't know how different the marketplace is these days, but back then I think it would have been great to have someone that early on I could have said, look, I know I'm starting in QA, but I want to get into design. This is what I want to do. How do I best achieve that? I think there wasn't really that kind of resource then. Whether someone like Codemasters or EA, maybe they have a specific person who helps with that kind of thing these days, career development or whatever. I'm not really sure, but yeah, that would have been a big thing for me.
More of a mentor, that type of thing, basically.
Yeah, potentially just some guidance because I think it was so new to me. I was enthusiastic, but there was not a real clear specific direction. I had to kind of find my own way through. And as ever with these things, any little bit of advice would help. And I did start to get that, I think, once I kind of plucked up the courage a bit to get to know some of the people on the programming teams, because they would often appear to be quite sort of scary, I guess, to outsiders, because they were so clever and so kind of, I guess, powerful within the company, because they were the ones that were doing the really amazing work of getting it all working on the screen. But yeah, I think it was just building up that, I guess you'd call it networking now, wouldn't you? But back then, just getting to know people, not necessarily around work initially. Just I can remember connecting with people over, a love of movies or playing sport and all these sorts of things. I used to play a lot of tennis back then, and we used to have little impromptu competitions, and I think that just helps you get known. So I got to know the producer of the Colin McRae series, Guy, the producer of the Tocker race car series, Gavin, and got to know Dave a bit, who was the head of the design department. And I think if you can, it sounds silly, but there were a lot of us back then a lot of people who come straight out of university, and some people fit that sort of that stereotype of the game industry. Maybe, if you're a programmer, you're expected to dress like a goth and have a heavy metal t-shirt or something like that. But also that slightly kind of nerdy, quiet, introverted character, there's quite a few in the games industry. So I think if you can force yourself to get to know people and talk to them, it's probably not the most complicated thing out there. But these things are somewhat alien to a lot of people. I think they were to me back then. I didn't have that experience of working in a team, and the power of just networking and getting to know people and just asking questions, finding out, how their job works, showing an interest.
And
I found people...
As the MD, Dean, as the MD of your own company now, what would you advise students just coming out of university now? What would you look for in students, and what would you advise students to brush up on, basically, for them to be attracted or attractive to your company?
I think definitely I'd go back to the whole thing of choosing your passion, something you genuinely love, and then displaying that passion to people. I think that there's a lot more avenues these days with, I think when I started, the internet was still fairly young, and I maybe had a mobile phone, but it certainly didn't have a camera or the internet on it. Now, we use a lot of people on Upwork, and that's a great way to find people for us. But yeah, I think having that passion, and just being determined and being honest and saying, having an interview and saying, this is what I really want to do. I love it. I'm prepared to start at the bottom and work hard and work my way up. And I think people respond to that. I think I can remember when I moved up a bit and I was in the design department, and we'd interview people, and sometimes trying to just get a word out of them was almost impossible. And I understand people are nervous, but if you see a few people like that, and then you get someone come in who's just like, I love games, I might not, I'd be honest and say I might not understand everything now, but I'm eager to learn, and I'm enthusiastic, and I'll work really hard. And I think there's always going to be opportunities for people like that, and certainly in the games industry, you're going to have to work your way up a bit. But beyond that, I think the more, I guess the typical response is, if you're interested in programming, create a little demo, learn how to use Unity or something like that, and create, back then I tried to learn a bit of programming and made a little version of Space Invaders, and just, again, it's just that trying to show that passion and that willingness to learn. But yeah, if you're into programming, make a little game. If you're into artwork, then create some interesting characters or scenes. If you're into design, then create a little design document for a game you'd like to make, or look at a game out there that you really like and try and come up with a serious analysis of it and the pros and cons. And then you've got the more sort of technological routes of starting a blog and making videos analysing games, or just playing games and talking about them. I think there are a lot of opportunities. But I haven't interviewed anyone for quite a while, but if I did, I think that's what I'd want to know. I'd want to see, what have you done? If someone came in an interview and just said, I really like games, and you ask them what their favourite game is, and they sort of go, it's this, but they can't really say much about why, then if I then interview someone and they I love games, I write about games, I blog about games, I make videos, I tweet, I live stream, here's some of my demos, here's some of my ideas, it's a no-brainer that you're gonna favour those people.
A lot of you said basically common sense to some people, but I think for students it's quite a daunting world out there.
Yeah,
we get a lot from MDs, CEOs, that type of thing, is the soft skills. So like you reiterated, communications, that type of thing basically. I mean, can you just reiterate on how important you would see soft skills for students and how they could maybe build on that?
Massive. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly that ability to communicate your passion. As I said, I've sat in on interviews with people, and yes, I'm sure they were nervous. But if you can't talk about your supposed passion of gaming or whatever, then how are you ever going to be able to sell yourself on anything? So yeah, I think I think certainly when I was back at university, we would sit around and in groups and as friends and just chat about movies that we liked and games that we liked and all the rest of it. And that's, again, as you said, these things are, on the one hand, they're common sense. I wish I had some amazing new insight into make this really easy. There isn't that. It is a lot of just sort of common sense and learning these basic skills of timekeeping and networking and communication. I think once I got into design, a big part of my job was trying to put the ideas in your head down onto paper in such a way that other people can understand it, which 20 years on is still something that I'm learning how to do, because everybody has a different way of interpreting something that's written down. But yeah, I think again, it all ties back to the same thing for me. I think having that passion and being able to get that over to somebody else in a genuine.
So if the students do brush up on their soft skills, say communications, emotional intelligence, all that good stuff, basically working, which isn't a norm nowadays. It can be difficult. Once they've got that, basically, I mean, what are the treats of the gaming industry that can offer? What can it offer to students?
I mean, for me, as someone who loves games, it's just the best industry to be in. You know, you're making games all day, you're playing games all day, talking about games, hanging out with other people that make games and love it. Yeah, and it's not. Maybe some people think, oh, you just sit around and play games all day, and there is a bit of an element of that, and it maybe has that image of being a fairly sort of laid back industry, but certainly at the crunch time, it's I guess it's that. But it is a lot of fun if you love games, for sure. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great skills you can learn. You know, I've learned to communicate much better. It's made me a much more confident person than I used to be. You know, and I had to do a lot of things I didn't enjoy, like getting up in front of people and talking to rooms full of people and stuff like that, which is, you know, very scary. I can remember being, you know, very nervous about doing things like that. And it gives you a certain confidence that you have to talk about your ideas and push your ideas across. Yeah, and I think, honestly, yeah, it's just whatever your passion is. I think that if you can work in, yeah, it's always going to be fulfilling. You know, I think money is great, but money doesn't motivate me massively. I think just working on a game, you know, that the first game I worked on properly, I think, you know, when that first time I saw it out in the shops, that's an amazing moment. And then to do that more readily.
Your joy.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, back then I seem to remember what was. I think I saw it in a shop, and then about an hour later, I saw a pirated version on a market stall, and that kind of ruined the day for me. But but yeah, it's a very fulfilling industry in that every so often, you know, you work really hard, and then it comes out, and maybe it gets some good review scores, and maybe it sells well and gets in the chart. That's all very, very rewarding. But also, I think just that you know, I've done it for 20 years. You know, pretty much most of my best friends are people that I've met in the games industry, because I think we just naturally have a lot in common, and they're all, you know, there's a lot of really nice people in the games industry. It is quite laid back, and it is quite fun at times, but there is also, of course, an element of hard work and performance.
That's the hard bit about it. It's working.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, that's great. Really informative. I think we don't want to keep too long. We could go on about soft skills and far more about the whole thing, but I think it's really informative about. And I think soft skills, the communications when leaving the university or college or etc., or trying to get into the gaming industry is the key. And there's a lot of ideas you give as well towards, you know, how you can make that a little bit easier for you. Dean, I want to say thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. I was just going to say, yeah, no, I agree. I think, you know, I look back, and one thing I was thinking about was sport. You know, I play a lot of sport, and I just, again, that being part of a team and having a specific role within that team, and I think you can learn a lot. I think it's maybe just being aware that some of these things that you're doing are providing the skills, and even you know, I look back, even just sat around the student union having a beer, talking about games we love. You maybe at the time you think, oh, this is great, I'm just having fun, but you are learning some valuable skills there in being able to communicate your opinion and get your views across, and talk, you know, in an eloquent way, hopefully, about something you love. It's maybe, again, probably at the time I didn't put much thought into some of these things, but I guess they do stand you in good stead down the line. Yeah,
no, absolutely, Dean. Dean, I think that'll be. I'm sure we're going to hear from each other again. I know we've got another couple of interviews lined up, but I want to say thank you very much for all the information today, and I'm pretty confident you're going to help a lot of people move into the game industry. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope so. It'd be great. Yeah, I mean, I think all I was going to say is I hope I haven't waffled on too much, because once I get started, I tend to drone on. Hopefully there was a couple of interesting nuggets of useful
information. To make it as possible, basically. Dean, thank you so much, okay, and we'll speak very soon, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Cheers.